When the human imagination turns toward the concept of sea monsters, it almost invariably drifts to the open ocean. We conjure images of the mythical beasts found in maritime folklore, the leviathans that haunted the dreams of sailors and cartographers alike. We picture the kraken dragging wooden hulls into the abyss, or the great serpents that undulating through the waves of the Atlantic. Yet, if one were to peel back the layers of history and travel deep into the geological past, these myths would be replaced by flesh and blood realities. The Mesozoic era was dominated by marine predators that were, for all intents and purposes, real-life sea monsters. The oceans of the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods were patrolled by the deadly Pliosaurs, with their crushing jaws, the serpent-like Mosasaurs that ruled the late waves, and the titanic ichthyosaurs that resembled living torpedoes. These fearsome animals made the decision to enter any saltwater body a potentially fatal error. However, the terror of the Mesozoic was not confined to the oceans. In those prehistoric times, not even the tranquility of a river or a freshwater lake was a guarantee of safety. Once in a rare blue moon, evolutionary pressure and opportunity drove these marine titans to cross the salinity barrier. They moved from the vast oceans into the intimate, murky constriction of freshwater ecosystems. There, they did not merely survive, they transformed into efficient killers, establishing themselves as the true river monsters of their age. The most iconic example of this transition from salt to freshwater appears in the late Cretaceous, a time roughly 85 million years ago. The world was warmer, the sea levels were higher, and in the region that would eventually become Western Hungary, a unique evolutionary experiment was taking place. Here, paleontologists uncovered the remains of a creature that defied the established laws of marine biology. They discovered the only known freshwater mosasaur, a creature named Pannoniasaurus. The scientific community gave this animal the specific epithet inexpectatus, a Latin descriptor meaning unexpected. This name was a direct reflection of the sheer surprise experienced by the researchers who discovered a mosasaur, a lineage of animals strictly associated with marine environments, buried deep within freshwater sediments. Specifically, the geology indicated a fluvial environment, meaning these animals lived and died in ancient rivers, not the sea. The implications of the discovery were profound. The paleontologists were able to deduce that the Pannoniasaurus did not simply wander into the river by mistake, nor was it a temporary visitor seeking refuge or breeding grounds. Isotopes and fossil evidence suggest it spent its entire life cycle in fresh water. This was a permanent resident. For the other animals sharing this river system, the presence of a mosasaur was a catastrophic development. The Pannoniasaurus was no minor threat. It was a mid-sized member of the Tethysaurini subfamily, but in the context of a river, it was a giant. Fully grown adults could reach lengths of 6 meters or 20 feet and weigh upwards of 550 kilograms. To put this mass into perspective, this prehistoric river monster was significantly heavier than the largest recorded American alligator of the modern era. It outsized many of the dinosaurs that walked the riverbanks and dwarfed the other aquatic predators in its vicinity. Evolution had tailored the Pannoniasaurus specifically for this new environment. Unlike its open ocean cousins, which possess skulls designed for pelagic hunting, this river monster possessed a flattened, crocodile-like skull. This morphology suggests a specific hunting strategy suited for shallow, murky waters. It likely practiced water-level ambush hunting, lying low beneath the surface before snapping upward to catch terrestrial prey, drinking at the edge, or snatching shallow water fish. Its dental battery consisted of conical, curved teeth, perfect for gripping slippery prey and puncturing the armor of amphibians or the scales of fish. Perhaps the most fascinating adaptation of the Pannoniasaurus lay in its limbs. While the fossil record for its limbs is incomplete, leading hypotheses suggest they were primitive compared to the fully formed flippers of marine mosasaurs. Rather than efficient hydrofoils, its limbs may have retained a more foot-like structure. While this might initially sound like an evolutionary disadvantage, in a river system it was a distinct asset. Combined with a robust sacrum and a heavy pelvis, these limbs allowed the animal to propel itself off the river floor. It could push, punt, and maneuver through the complex topography of a riverbed in a way that a purely open ocean swimmer never could. The habitat it patrolled was rich in life, providing a smorgasbord for such a versatile predator. The ecosystem supported a diversity of fish, amphibians, lizards, birds, and even non-avian dinosaurs. In true mosasaur fashion, the Pannoniasaurus sat at the apex of this food web, dominating its habitat for millions of years. While the mosasaurs made a significant impact, the fossil record suggests that they were arguably not the most successful group at invading freshwater ecosystems. That title belongs to the Plesiosaurs. This group of marine reptiles, famous for their four-flippered propulsion and varying neck lengths, swam their way into the fabric of biological history with remarkable adaptability. They appear in myths and legends, often cited as the inspiration for lake monsters like the Beast of Loch Ness, but their reality is far more grounded and equally fascinating. One of the most striking examples of a plesiosaur adapting to river life comes from the Kem geological group of eastern Morocco. Dated to the early late Cretaceous, this region is often described by paleontologists as the most dangerous place in the history of Earth. It was a river system teeming with colossal predators, a place where survival required extreme adaptation. Here, researchers unearthed a unique find consisting of both an adult and a juvenile plesiosaur within the river strata. Due to the fragmented nature of the remains, scientists have been unable to assign a specific species name, yet they could determine its lineage. It belonged to the Leptocleididae family, a group known for being smaller and more compact than their massive marine relatives. Despite being small for a plesiosaur, the Kem reptile was still a formidable animal by modern standards. Adults reached lengths of approximately 3 meters or 10 feet, making them comparable in size to a large bull shark. Its diet likely consisted of the abundant clams, snails, and fish that filled the river system. However, given the diversity of the Kem beds, it is probable that this predator was opportunistic, feeding on amphibians, lizards, snakes, turtles, and perhaps even the small pterosaurs that skimmed the water's surface. The physical build of this plesiosaur was streamlined, granting it the agility necessary to navigate the currents and debris of a river system. Yet, its existence was defined by caution. In the Kem beds, being 3 meters long did not guarantee safety. This environment was the home of the Spinosaurus, the largest carnivorous dinosaur known to science and a semi-aquatic specialist. It was also inhabited by massive crocodilians and giant sawfish. The Kem plesiosaur was a predator, certainly, but it was also prey. It lived in the shadow of titans, navigating a perilous existence where it was constantly at risk of being targeted by the very top of the food chain. If the Kem plesiosaur represents the struggle for survival in a hostile land, the freshwater plesiosaurs of the Western Hemisphere represent total dominance. To understand the true potential of these animals as river monsters, one must look to the Dinosaur Park Formation of Alberta, Canada. In rocks dated to 75 million years ago, scientists discovered the remains of a creature named Fluvionectus. Unlike its Moroccan counterpart, Fluvionectus was a giant. It was a member of the elasmosaurid family, the lineage famous for their disproportionately long necks. This animal grew to lengths of 7 meters, or 23 feet, outsizing all other plesiosaurs found in freshwater sediments. It was the undisputed ruler of its domain. The anatomy of Fluvionectus provides a masterclass in predatory mechanics. Its long neck was not merely a strange feature, it was a sophisticated hunting tool. In the murky, silt-filled waters of a Cretaceous river, visibility was limited. The Fluvionectus could utilize its neck to project its small, unassuming head into schools of fish or groups of unsuspecting prey, while its massive body remained typically unseen in the gloom behind. This separation of head and body allowed for a high degree of stealth. The head could strike without the pressure wave of the large body, alerting the prey. Furthermore, being an elasmosaurid meant it had a specific advantage in maneuverability. While it lacked the explosive speed of a shark, its 4 large flippers allowed for precise, stable movement. It could hover, turn tightly, and drift through the currents with eerie silence. The Fluvionectus was not alone in these Canadian rivers. It shared its habitat with a second type of plesiosaur, a member of the polycotylid family. These polycotylids were distinct from elasmosaurs. They possessed short necks and large, elongated heads, resembling those of Pliosaurs. However, remains of this second species are incomplete, rendering it indeterminate in the scientific record. What is clear is that Fluvionectus outsized it significantly, creating a tiered hierarchy of predators within the river, with the long-necked giant firmly at the top. The narrative of freshwater invasion takes a darker, more brutal turn when we travel to the ancient waterways of Australia. Here, the separation between sea monster and river monster blurs completely. The evidence for this particular creature is scant, consisting primarily of isolated teeth, but in paleontology, teeth can tell a comprehensive story. These teeth belonged to a pliosaur, a group of short-necked, large-headed reptiles that are often considered the most fearsome predators of the Mesozoic seas. The dimensions of the teeth found in these Australian freshwater sediments suggest a creature of terrifying proportions. Scientists estimate that this unnamed pliosaur grew to around 5 meters, or 16.5 feet, from nose to tail. More impressively, its robust build suggests a weight of a staggering 1.5 tons. This was not a creature that fed on snails or small clams. The size of its dental weaponry indicates a preference for macro-predation. It had its sights set on large fish, thick-skinned crocodiles, and small dinosaurs. One can easily envision the predatory dynamic, a dinosaur venturing too close to the riverbank to drink, unaware that a 1.5-ton reptile was watching from the depths. The attack would have been explosive, a violent surge of water and muscle designed to drag the victim into the river before it could react. Interestingly, this Australian ecosystem also hosted a second, smaller plesiosaur. Much like the situation in Canada, different families of marine reptiles were occupying the same freshwater niche. However, in this scenario, the smaller plesiosaur likely fell onto the menu of the giant pliosaur. The presence of such a massive apex predator in a river system demonstrates that these were not merely lost animals trying to survive. They were thriving populations capable of supporting massive body sizes and complex food webs. The existence of Pannoniasaurus in Hungary, the leptocleidids in Morocco, Fluvionectus in Canada, and the Pliosaurs of Australia points to a widespread global phenomenon. Marine reptiles were exceptionally good at infiltrating rivers. They did so across different continents, different time periods, and different families. This success has led paleontologists to propose a compelling hypothesis regarding the competition for aquatic dominance. During the Mesozoic, another group of marine reptiles, known as ichthyosaurs, dominated the oceans. These animals looked remarkably like modern dolphins or tuna, specialized for high-speed swimming in the open sea. Yet, despite their success in the ocean, there are no confirmed records of freshwater ichthyosaurs. They never made the transition. The leading theory posits that the Plesiosaurs and Pliosaurs were simply too efficient. They may have acted as a biological barrier, occupying the freshwater niches so effectively that they prevented the ichthyosaurs from ever establishing a foothold. The flexibility of the plesiosaur body plan, which allowed for maneuvering in tight river channels and navigating shallow water, may have given them the edge over the rigid, tuna-like bodies of the ichthyosaurs. In this view, the rivers of the Mesozoic were not empty spaces waiting to be filled. They were highly competitive battlegrounds where only the most adaptable lineages could survive. The Plesiosaurs and Mosasaurs proved that they were not just monsters of the deep ocean, but masters of the aquatic realm in its entirety. Today, looking at a calm river, it is difficult to imagine that such creatures once lurked beneath the surface. The idea of a 20-foot reptile punting along the bottom of a river in Hungary, or a long-necked giant silently stalking fish in Alberta seems alien to our modern understanding of freshwater ecosystems. The extinction event that closed the Mesozoic era wiped these magnificent animals from the face of the earth. The non-avian dinosaurs, the pterosaurs, and the great marine reptiles all vanished, leaving the rivers to be inherited by the crocodiles, turtles, and fish we recognize today. However, the fossil record remains as a testament to their reign. It serves as a reminder that the boundaries we perceive between the ocean and the river are porous. Nature constantly pushes life to expand, to invade new territories, and to adapt. For millions of years, the rivers of the world were the domain of creatures that rivaled the greatest myths of human history. They were the unexpected, the titanic, and the terrifying. They were the river kings of a lost world, and their story is a powerful chapter in the history of life on our planet. We may be thankful that they are no longer around to haunt our waterways, but we must also marvel at the evolutionary majesty that allowed them to conquer the world. From the deepest trenches of the ocean to the winding currents of the river,